Hello friends, I am Dr. Urmi Satyan, and for today's video lecture I have selected Julian Barnes' novel The Sense of an Ending. This novel presents a story of four school-time friends, Tony Webster, Alex, Colin and Adrian Finn. They all oscillate between the emotions of pleasure and pain, loss and gain, and in due course come to understand the dynamics of time and life. The text constructs a theory that it is only after unburdening the self from mental stress that one can attain happiness, which is much more essential than any amount of materialistic gain. Tony Webster, the narrator, shows the learning curve of his friends and himself, who all grow from mischievous teenagers to mature men. The story unfolds with Tony remembering a shy, intellectual, sincere, uncomplaining and less demanding friend, Adrian Finn. Adrian's life was quite dismal as his mother had walked out on their family, leaving him to grow up with his father and sister. Adrian's friends find that his mother's unexpected desertion turns him philosophical and too pragmatic. Adrian's classmate Robson commits suicide. As readers, we are shocked to see that Adrian is not disturbed by this news. Rather, he behaves complacently and quotes Camus and says that suicide is the only true philosophical question. When Tony questions Adrian's mother's loyalty towards family, he remains silent. He does not show any disrespect towards her. He believes that history is that certainty produced at the point where the imperfection of memory meets the inadequacy of documentation. In due course, these friends complete their schooling and begin new chapters in their lives. Adrian goes to Cambridge on scholarship, Tony to Bristol, Colin to Sussex, and Alex joins his father's business. Despite promises to keep in touch, their busy lives result in widening chasms of distance. Tony goes on to narrate his engagements with girlfriends, breakups, patch-ups, marriages and divorce. He begins this chapter of his life by introducing Veronica Ford, his first girlfriend. When he meets Veronica's family, he notices that her father is heavy-footed and heavy-handed, dominating person, and her brother is a self-appointed judge. Tony also notices that Veronica and her mother both are almost suppressed by her father and brother. After a few months, when the friends decide to meet again, they get to meet Veronica. But this meeting proves tragic for Tony, because his girlfriend Veronica and Adrian get attracted to each other. Tony receives a letter from Adrian informing him of the same and Tony and Veronica's relationship thus comes to an end. Tony then meets an American girl, Annie, and they spend 3 months together. Tony's mother's illness, however, brings him back home, where he receives a letter from Alex informing him about Adrian's suicide. This news shatters him and pushes him towards another truth of life. He says, life is a gift bestowed without anyone asking for it, that the thinking person has a philosophical duty to examine both the nature of life and the conditions it comes with. Later, after a year, when Colin, Alex and Tony meet again, he tells his friends about his marriage with Margaret and her subsequent walking out of his life. She had agreed to share their daughter Susie's custody. He tells them of Margaret marrying one of her friends, but when he leaves her, she wants to reunite with Tony. He talks of denying the proposal, discovering his enjoyment of his habitual solitude and taking responsibility as a single parent. After retirement, he starts serving patients in a hospital and thus finds meaning to the life. The second part of the book shows how Tony contemplates and discovers the true meaning of life. Tony understands that the meaning of life is to accept the power of time. He says, time first grounds us and then confounds us. Tony then finds peace in getting busy with the younger generation of his daughter Susie and her kids. Tony learns new emotions and discovers the truth of life with newer experiences. Settled into a daily mundane existence, Tony is startled by one more challenge that life presents before him. He receives a solicitor's letter announcing him as the sole legal inheritor of Mrs. Ford's, that is, Veronica's mother's estate worth £500. Tony remembers Mrs. Sarah as a woman who was patronized by her husband, loftily scrutinized by her son, and manipulated by her daughter. Mrs. Ford had mentioned in the letter that in nominating Tony as an inheritor, she is being purgative on behalf of her family, that is, husband and son and daughters, ill treatment towards him. Mrs. Ford's letter disturbs Tony emotionally. Tony rereads the letters that he had written to Veronica long back. He finds himself bitter to Veronica and Adrian. It pains him even more when he comes across a letter from Veronica telling him the story of her life, her drunken father's death from cancer, her mother's struggle as a single parent, her smoking addiction followed by a painful death. It fills Tony with remorse. To get rid of his growing guilt, he phones Veronica, asks for her pardon, and both of them decide to meet. Tony shares his life story with her about his marriage with Margaret, Susie's birth, his divorce, being a single parent to Susie and a grandpa to her children. Veronica, however, does not talk much about her life. Tony's belief of having suppressed memories of Veronica for 40 years is a mere fragment of his imagination, according to Veronica. She also finds this thought repugnant and only oriented towards earning sympathy of the listener. Veronica appears much more realistic compared to Tony in dealing with human relations. In the old age, when Veronica and Margaret have already walked out of his life and Susie is occupied in her own work, Tony engages himself mostly by visiting malls and pubs. On one such visit, he happens to meet a man whom he later recognizes as Adrian and Veronica's son. Tony is aghast as he tries to gaze Veronica's pain as a single parent to this child. Now he blames Adrian, who had got his girlfriend pregnant, been unable to face the consequences, and had taken the easy way out. This remorse strangely reminds him of Robson's suicide, whose girlfriend also might have suffered social injustice, that is what he thinks, and maybe had also given birth to a child that she had probably raised single-handedly. Tony is aggrieved at the thought that Robson may also have committed suicide after making his girlfriend pregnant. Tony's mind gets crowded with apologies not only for Veronica and her son, but also for Robson's girlfriend and her child, if there is any. These many revelations demystify Tony's understanding of life. He comes to the realization that life is totally under the control of time. These revelations clear all his doubts, sentiments, judgments, apprehensions, assumptions, and help him explore a new meaning to life. He writes a letter of apology to Veronica and her son and wishes them good luck. Having expressed these boiling emotions, he finds himself settled again. He tries to resettle back into his life with his daughter Susie and her children. But Tony comes to know that Veronica died before receiving any of his letters. This deepens his guilt further. The book ends with these remorseful lines by Tony. There is accumulation, there is responsibility, and beyond these, there is unrest. There is great unrest. The author wins our philosophical vote for proving that time, either missed or misjudged, may fill one's life with nothing but remorse. The layers of revelations about Veronica's lifelong struggle as a widow and a single parent to 2 kids leaves Tony shattered. Tony feels helpless for not being able to unburden himself of the guilt of misjudgments about Veronica's relationship with Adrian. Adrian committed suicide, leaving Veronica pregnant, and Veronica died, leaving a young daughter and a disabled adult son. Tony seems to be waiting for some general law that can punish him, give him retribution for what he perceives as his crimes. He desperately needs some spiritual associations that can lessen the heaviness of the guilt that he is enveloped in. Thus, the trio of Tony, Veronica, and Adrian gives the readers a chance to gain an insight into human nature. Julian Barnes presents a group of young friends, their abrupt decisions, misjudgments, and the eventual inability to solve their puzzled life. The axiom by the 18th century British poet, "Proper study of mankind is man," holds true when a drastic change is noticed in Tony's thinking and evaluation patterns. Adrian's suicide, Tony's remorse, and Veronica's struggle as a single parent to 2 kids prove what Tony says in the beginning: we live in time. It holds us and molds us. Some emotions speed it up, others slow it down. Occasionally, it seems to go missing until the eventual point when it really does go missing, never to return. Friends, reading The Sense of an Ending will certainly be a cathartic exercise. Please read for more interest. That is it for today. Bye for now.